Ava, and we're here today to try to talk a little bit about exclusively pumping. Now I want to do a caveat or disclaimer of some sort to be like, I don't know if I did this right. I was a first-time mom. There was a lot going on, obviously, with Ava's stuff. Hi. And so please take anything I say here with a grain of salt and work with lactation consultants and the specialists around you to have success at this. Please don't take what I say and then go do something, because I, again, don't know if I did it right. But obviously, because Ava had a cleft palate, she couldn't breastfeed. And that meant that in order to get her breast milk, I had to exclusively pump. And that was something I didn't do a lot of research on beforehand, because I was still holding out and hoping that, you know, maybe, just maybe, I would be able to breastfeed. Like maybe her cleft and my equipment, I guess, would fit together just perfectly. It would fill up the hole and she would be able to breastfeed. I don't know if that happens or how often that happens, but for some reason I was like, well, maybe this will happen for me. It didn't. And I had talked about before how I kind of had to grieve the loss of breastfeeding, but what that meant is I had to pump and pump all of the time, because basically you are mimicking a baby's demand, except for with the pump. Hi. So every 3 hours, I was attached to the pumping equipment, and it was really, really difficult actually, because I didn't get the benefit right away of like getting to hold the new baby and getting to bond with her, because as far as like division of labor, what we did is that Dan would take the feedings, my husband Dan, and I would do pumping, and that way I could have time to eat or sleep. You know, my sleep is so precious those first couple weeks, and that led to some mini breakdowns on my part, because I felt like I was just, I was unimportant, I guess, which is silly, but it was like an emotional response, because I was just attached to the machine all of the time, every 3 hours. And sometimes it was even in the same room, so I could watch Dan, or it was usually Dan. I could watch Dan feed the baby, but I wasn't getting to hold the baby. And like I missed her, and I felt like, oh, well, I'm just a machine. Like there was a lot of hard emotional feelings. My doctor at the time pointed out, the pediatrician, so I guess not my doctor, but Ava's doctor, pointed out, was like, oh, well, use some formula, or if you have any like backed up breast milk, feed the baby first, then pump. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. But I was so like emotionally in it that I just couldn't, I was so just going one thing to the next that I couldn't even think of like that very, very logical solution. So taking some feeds over helped. And then what we ended up doing was two things, because I'm very organized. The first thing was we put alarms in the phone for every 3 hours of like pumping or feeding. And then after a couple weeks, I noticed that I was making more than enough milk. And so I transitioned to pumping every 6 hours roughly, instead of every 3. And in hindsight, I don't think I was supposed to do that. I think that made the ability to increase my supply later much more difficult. But I didn't know that at the time. So what we did is we put together a schedule, and I can kind of show you what we have. Let's see if it'll focus. So this was our feeding schedule. We put meals in there. We put when I pumped, when I did the feeds, when Dan did the feeds, when Dan was at work. And this came into play for us. We did a different version of it when Dan was still at home, but when Dan went back to work and I was by myself with the baby, that was how we kind of set everything up. That way that I made sure I was getting food, and I made sure that I was feeding and pumping. So the time requirement to be an exclusively pumping mom is crazy. It is a full-time job because it took, like, you're supposed to pump for like 15-20 minutes, but you have to get all the equipment on, you have to get all the equipment off, you have to wash everything so that you can use it again for the next time. So that would take me 30 to 40 minutes. And then you had to feed the baby, like for the times that Dan wasn't at home to help. And that, as you know, takes about a half hour because you don't want her to be eating much longer than a half hour. So then that was about an hour of your time. And everything needs to be sanitized at a certain point, and that takes probably another half hour. Like, I would say we did that every 6 hours. So, and then if I put meals in there too, like, if you think about it, your time very quickly just disappears. You are literally spending all of your time trying to feed. Now, in the first couple weeks, I did try putting Ava to breast with a nipple shield, and she could do the chomping motion, but she couldn't feed for nutritional purposes because she just wasn't getting enough, and it was tiring her out. And that with the breathing issues, it just wasn't worth her burning those extra calories when she just wasn't getting the nutrients. So I would pump all this stuff, store it, label it, and it was just really, really time consuming. And for Ava specifically, we did have to put formula into the breast milk anyway because it had to be fortified, because she had to get more calories because she was burning so many calories with her breathing problems. So I was very proud of myself because I did this schedule and this constant pumping and like the added stress that takes through her hospital stay. So even when we were in the hospital, I was hooked up to these machines. At that point, it was every 6 hours, not every 3. But and I think the stress of the hospital stay made my supply start to go down because I started to notice that I wasn't getting as much, and I wasn't sure if it was like in my head or not. So I tracked it and I wrote down how much I was getting at each pumping session. I tracked it for about a week, and I noticed that it was going down from what it was before. Then what I did is I tried, all the things that you try to increase milk supply. So I did the tea, I did the supplement, I did power pumping, which ended up just really hurting and doing like some chafing thing that was pretty horrible. And then to do that level of frequency with the pumping and that pain, so I tried like a different kind of, because I would put, I think it was the Mother Love nipple cream is what I would put on there and on the pump to help the lubrication so that it didn't hurt. So I put more of that, and then when I started hurting from the power pumping, because I think that's what caused it, I tried a different lubrication thing, which helped. But at that point, between the stress and the hurting and the hospital stay, like I just really wasn't getting any. So I did get to a point where, and I think this is a couple, like maybe a week after her hospital stay, 2 weeks after her hospital stay, because I documented. So she was around 3 months old. No, 2.5 months old at that point. I decided to slowly stop, and my goal was to kind of do like a backlog of breast milk, and then also to start gradually transitioning her to all formula. So we did like a couple weeks where she'd have like half and half, and then she did a quarter and 3/4, etc., to get her little system ready for that as well. Luckily she took pretty well, and because of what I had saved up, because of what I had saved up, I was able to give her breast milk through the time she was 3 months old, which I was really, really proud of. I also wanted to say the advice that they gave me when I was finishing up pumping was to make sure that we saved 2 servings basically of breast milk so that Ava could have them before her surgeries, because breast milk takes less time to digest in their systems before they go under anesthesia. So we do have some in the bottom of our freezer still for her upcoming surgeries. I'm hoping it will still be good. At the very least, we have something we can try because like otherwise it's going to be a long time before she will be able to eat again after those surgeries. And having a hurting baby who is also hungry, I think is going to be difficult. So wish us luck with that one. That was some good advice. To the moms out there that do exclusively pumping and last much longer than I did, you guys are warriors. Like, you are insane, incredible. Like, it is so difficult, and I give props to the moms that are able to make that work. So as you can see, she is still healthy. She is still thriving on formula. I know that there is a lot of strong feelings in the mom community about breast milk versus formula. So I just ask that any kind of comments below, you just keep really positive. Obviously, if I could have breastfed her, I would have. But our case really didn't allow that. And so I did what I could, and I am at peace with that. And I think that that's really what we should offer all moms. So thank you for listening. I think I rambled on this topic more than I planned on. But it's good to see you guys, and I will hopefully be back soon. All right, bye. Can you say bye? Bye, 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 bye. What?